Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Taryn Voget. How are you today, Taryn?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Excellent. I am looking forward to this conversation, and I cannot wait for the listeners to learn so much goodness from you today. And so just to share a little bit about you, Taryn, you are the creator and founder of Everyday Genius and also the Genius Lab. And I think your mission sort of helps visionary leaders, you help founders, you help creative types really dive into what their unique genius is, and also to help create extraordinary results for people. And so we're going to be talking about all of that today, but I always love to have my guests share how this came to be for them, what led you down this path to where you are today.
Well, it's a crazy story of how the Everyday Genius Institute at the time came to be 15 years ago. I had done corporate consulting and was pretty burned out on it because they're just long, crazy hours. And I had this thought of, I've done everyone else's projects. I want to do my own. And I thought I wanted something innovative, something no one's ever done before, something that helps people, something that I find interesting. I had like this list of criteria just kind of in my mind. And I spent 6 months thinking, God, what could I build? What would be cool? Simultaneously, I was taking a psychology class on the weekends, like a human behavior class, because I thought it was really interesting. And I had become a coach in the class, like the next time it was taught, because I just found it interesting and I wanted to keep going. And so anyway, one day I was driving, it was a Saturday, I'll never forget. I was living in Sausalito in the Bay Area, and I was driving over the Golden Gate Bridge, and all of a sudden I felt this like flash of lightning hit my head. And in an instant, I saw the whole thing. I saw the name of the company I was going to build, the Everyday Genius Institute. I saw what it was going to do, how I was going to build it, what it was going to be. Like, I saw everything in just a flash. And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And then I showed up to coach. It was actually the first day of that class. I showed up to coach, and who do I meet? But one of the top wine tasters in the whole world. And he teaches people to become wine tasters. And I thought, this is my first Everyday Genius project. I'm going to deconstruct the genius of this wine taster and then teach everybody how he does it, because people that get really good at what they do usually don't know how they do it, because a lot of it becomes very subconscious. And at the time, the version 1 of Everyday Genius was to deconstruct how the world's best do what they do and then package it back up in a book. And at the time, it was a DVD set, so that you could learn like how to taste wine from a pro, or write copy, or study strategies for students that were really successful. And I had a bunch of these different projects. And it was a successful company in so much as that I did a lot of really cool projects, and we got into a bunch of big box stores. But I also, at a certain point, realized I don't love the products business. It is a tough business unless you're massively more capitalized than I was. And so I kind of burned out on it in that version of it, and then went on a walkabout when I'm kind of back into consulting, but never really left Everyday Genius. It's always still been my company. But a couple of years ago, I thought, I'm not quite done. Not quite done with Everyday Genius, with my original vision, which was really to help people be better at whatever it is they do and they care about. And this version of it's been more fun for me in a way, because it's not so reliant on product sales. It's my YouTube channel. It's a new book that I'm coming out with. It's still consulting. I opened the Genius Lab, which I created not just to people that I wanted to interview, but to anybody who wanted to learn how they do what they do. And so I've kind of made it more fun for me. And as a result, it's actually, I think, been more of a realization of my original vision.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I love that, first of all, it came to you just boom out of nowhere, but did it really? Because it's like these things have sort of been formulating in your mind, and then all of a sudden it kind of came together in one piece, and you realized what it is that you wanted to create and what you wanted to do. But then it became something different and it evolved. And so I love that idea too, because we start out with one idea and think that this is what we're going to do. This is the path we're taking. and we close ourselves off to what needs to be, what needs to happen or how it needs to grow and change. And so I love that you were open to that, sort of a cocoon period, and then it exploded into the butterfly. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. And the idea of teaching people how it's almost like the master class. You're teaching people how to do something that they maybe hadn't ever thought they could do before, but learning from these masters. So tell us then what it means by genius, and I'm air quoting that, and then how is it different than most people think it is?
That's my favorite question. Most people have the idea that you can measure genius on a test, and it's been this cultural myth that has been reinforced, and in many ways quite falsely. Like everybody says, oh, Einstein had an IQ of whatever, 169. Einstein never took the test. That's just what people think he might have possibly scored. And even the inventor of the IQ test, by the way, the IQ test was the original standardized testing, and it came about in the French public school system, and I think it was like 1910. Because they wanted to find a way to figure out what students were doing well in school and which ones might need more help. And that was really the intention of the test. And for a very brief time, the upper limit score you could get was the genius level, but it only lived for about 10 years until they realized it was actually not the right way to label that. And it had no correlation between anybody's score on the test to what they actually did in life. And so they renamed the top bracket instead of the genius level to, it was like very exceptional. And, or very gifted was another one. There's different versions of the test. And so it hasn't been since, I want to say 1924, that the genius level is even a term, but people still have this idea that it is. It's not. And so people still think, though, that you can measure genius on a test, but you really can't. And what I've come to discover after deconstructing countless geniuses is that it really has nothing to do with IQ in the sense that you can measure. And genius really is when three things come together. And people think that, like, oh, they're born a genius. Well, here's how I would say it. Everybody is born with a genius. Not everybody acts on that. But through your passion, your excitement, and your focus over time, what I call geniusing, as your geniusing, at some point, these three elements, which I'll talk about in a second, come together enough so that it looks to the outer world like somebody is a genius. But I don't know a single person that started off like right out of the womb with this incredible, like genius level, whatever. It's all a developed skill, ability, and whatever. But here's three elements of genius. Number one is passion, because passion is not just the fuel to keep going and the fuel to keep getting better. It also does something really interesting. When you're operating from something that you're excited about or you're passionate about or you're curious about, people use different words for kind of the same energy. You're just jazzed about the thing. What that does is it actually raises your vibration or your energy level. It's kind of like if you think about an energy level, like when you're all sad and depressed, like it's really hard to get a good idea in this state. But when you're all jazzed and excited and you're high on life and you're doing your thing you love, you raise your energy and you access more information from the quantum field. Like that's one benefit of it. But it also creates more synchronicity in that place to keep your ideas flowing and your projects and your whatever your passion is moving forward. So when people have a lot of success, you think, oh, they just got lucky. No, they were operating on their passion and it brought about all of these incredibly good things. So that's the first thing. So element number one, foundational element, is something that you're jazzed about and jazzed about enough that you keep pushing and trying to get better. Number two is strategy, and strategy has a lot of elements to it, but it's really like how you do something. And when you're first learning, your strategy is usually pretty basic and simple. Like I was first learning pickleball, and it was like, get the ball over the net. Like it was that simple, right? Now that I've been playing for a while, it's a much more sophisticated strategy, hit it where they're not, try to get a topspin, dink when they're back, like all this other strategy comes into play, right? And that's true with whatever we do. Whenever we get better, we start getting more sophisticated in how we approach it and how we do it, and more nuance. And over enough time, our strategy gets really good. And that's where you can get strategy to the point of mastery. Mastery and genius are not necessarily the same thing. Because here's where the third element comes into play that really makes something look and feel like genius. And it's this idea of channeling. Now, most people think that we think really hard and we get these great ideas, but that's actually not how it actually works. What happens is we get into a state. Some people call it the zone. Some people call it a flow state. Some people call it channeling. but we get into a state where we receive information. And through our focus and our intention, we take the unlimited sea of ideas and possibility and, realities, and we filter them into what we're actually wanting kind of through our focus and our intention. And we channel that. And so many people talk about this, like athletes when they're in the zone, they feel like they can't not win, like they can only win when they're in that space. Or writers talk about, I didn't write the story wrote itself through me. And that's when those moments of genius happen. It's why you get really good ideas in the shower, because you're not thinking and you're kind of open and your mind kind of expands and you're in this kind of quantum field receptivity and boop, you get the idea that you've kind of been wanting. Or you're driving, so that relaxed time. And the best people I know actually schedule this kind of time because they know the power of it. So when passion plus great strategy, which is really about how you get better over time, plus these channeled moments, when those three things come together and they come together often enough, it can often look like, oh, wow, that's genius. But that's really the mechanics of it, which is why I always say we're all in the process of geniusing. Now, here's the one trick. I can't tell you how many geniuses have not been discovered in their own lifetime. They were discovered long after they died. And certainly, Vincent van Gogh is one of the more famous ones. He sold like one painting in his life to his uncle, I think it was. And, he's now, I think, the highest paid artist ever, long after he's dead. And so we can't rely on the others to recognize our genius because sometimes when things are particularly new or innovative, it is really hard for mass consciousness to see it for what it is in the moment. It sometimes takes a while for humanity to catch up with our newness. So that's often, I think, a challenge. And this is why I think in some ways people that keep going despite the fact they don't get a lot of traction in some ways are my heroes because it's really hard. But sometimes there's this drive within us that just knows that we need to create it, whether it's for this lifetime or the next. But I also really like the idea of the everyday genius, which is that we've got these people all around us every day, that there's just these moments of perfection that come together. The three elements come together. It's the server at a restaurant. It's the parent talking to their child in a perfect way. It's a teacher that just had the most beautiful way of explaining something. It's, a leader that just rallied their team in a moment that was really important and they got something done. Like these moments of genius happen all around us. And just because someone doesn't have a Wikipedia page doesn't mean they're not just as brilliant as someone who does.
That's excellent, Taryn. Thank you so much for the detail in those three different points. So the clarity there, I think, was really helpful. So thank you for that. And I just felt so much about what you said. Well, first of all, I had to laugh a little bit about the pickleball point, because it's something that I've just started playing as well. So I get that, the strategy. I have none right now, but that it will come, right? Because as I develop the skill, then the strategy comes. So I love that, tie into an everyday experience that I think we can all relate to, whatever it could be. I mean, maybe it's painting for you. And so initially you are like a 5-year-old with some watercolor paints, but over time, this strategy, the skill, it all develops and grows. And then, maybe you'll become a Van Gogh, who knows? But yeah, and then that point too on the mastery and this idea that people in the now may not recognize it, but that you keep going because you don't know if it's 5, 10 years, 50 years, before it's recognized. Maybe it isn't in your lifetime, but that it's something that has to come from you and you have to get it out. And so I love all of that. It's good stuff. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let me ask you then, because it sounds like, I mean, passion is the key, right? I mean, it's number one. So how is that our compass? How is that what helps us determine what direction we go? And what does that look like in real time?
So passion is interesting. A lot of people, I think, get kind of tripped up on this word because they don't feel this like raging excitement for anything. Passion is different for different people. Some people just come onto this planet with a like, I'm going to go do this thing. I think Ed Sheeran is a great example of that. I quite like Ed Sheeran's music. He's a great example of somebody who did not start off as a great musician, but honed his craft. And if you listen to his early stuff, it was terrible. And he talks about this very publicly. But he just had a passion to make music and be a pop star. And he kind of came in with that. But I think more what I see is people that kind of follow their interest It kind of leads them here, it leads them there. They don't always feel like a raging passion inside, but they know when it's time to stop and do something new, and they kind of try to figure that out. And both paths are okay, because here's what I have discovered. Even if you don't feel a raging passion, our souls are actually smart enough to make sure that we're kind of exploring the themes that ultimately connect dots later down the road. And sometimes it's not always fun, but that gives us information that we can then use later for something else. And so just because you haven't felt a raging passion your whole life doesn't mean you haven't still actually followed a perfect journey. Now, that said, it is a lot more fun when it's exciting or it feels interesting or you're following your curiosity. And more often than not, that will actually lead to much more success for somebody. But when people don't really have a feeling of what their passion is, in my experience, it's usually because it's kind of buried beneath some layers of, I should do this, I can't do that. What if people laugh at me? Like some trauma around something or some family ancestral pattern that's kind of keeping you in something. This has actually been one of mine that I've realized recently. Like, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I my whole life have been an entrepreneur. Like, I couldn't be anything else. And I just kind of had this moment recently where I was like, am I doing this because it's my passion? Or is it because it's like an ancestral pattern that's like the air I breathe, And it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, wait a second. What if I don't have to be an entrepreneur? And again, sometimes our real passions are buried underneath some of these layers. And the trick is to find something we're even a little bit curious about and follow that thread, even if it's a part-time thing on the weekends or whatever it is. And often that will start to reveal itself in a bigger way. And these things that are blocking our path or blocking us from expressing that more fully kind of come to the surface. We can deal with them, heal them, change beliefs, do whatever it is. And then our passion comes even more online for something else. And it's a process. And I think the process is in some ways part of why we're here, is to figure that all out and come back to who we are as these divine beings that we're meant to create. And we just got to remove some layers sometimes to like let the fullness of us express itself.
Yeah, really well said. Thank you for that. So much in there that I want to touch on. Okay, first of all, the uncovering of layers. And whether they're self-imposed or they're imposed by, parents or society or whatever, all this, I should do this, I should do that, I think is huge, especially for women, right? There's so many things that are put on us as requirements, and that can often like squish whatever it is truly that we want to express. And so, maybe in time, you make choices, it becomes available to you where it wasn't before, and you can now sort of put forth whatever it is that you need to express. So I think that that's such an interesting thing to think about, is maybe not now, but later. It's a possibility. I loved what you pointed out in there about the kind of almost breadcrumbs. It's like these little things that are happening along the way that really lead to, by experience, what it is that we're going to become, or that what we're going to do. And so I love that idea, for sure. Is something that really speaks to me in this. We are who we are because of the experiences that we had and the meaning that we placed on all of those things. So I think that's, you've said that in a beautiful way. Okay, so let me ask you then, because a lot of it is, we don't do something because of fear. Or you mentioned in there, like, I shouldn't do this because, and name the thing. So what role do fear and trauma and, all of those shoulds and shouldn'ts play into disconnecting us from what our genius is?
Fear is something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, partly because I feel like most days I live in it.
Mhm.
uh, it's a complex subject in a couple of ways. So where does fear come from? It usually comes from this idea that we're afraid if we do something, something bad will happen. I mean, that is like the simplest, most basic way to think about fear. And yet, it's really a part of us trying to keep us safe. So it's also serving us. And where I think this fear often comes from is from beliefs that we have that just aren't true. And so I'll never forget the very first time, God, this is so many years ago now, but back when like the internet kind of came out, I mean, this is how many decades I've been around. everybody was doing websites. And I was like, I'm in consulting. I've got my own business. I should have a website. And so I went to build my website. And I cannot tell you the absolute terror, and I mean terror where I was shaking before I hit the publish button. And I was like, I had to breathe myself through it. I hit the publish button. And you want to know what happened? Absolutely nothing happened. Nothing. A few people said, oh, that's great. That was the extent of it. Nobody even went there. Nobody cared. Everyone was like, it's fine. It's great. Whatever. It was all in my mind, right? And this has been me over and over and over again of just like feeling this incredible terror. Usually it's for me some version of being seen, feeling absolutely terrified, and then being like, okay, just breathe through it and do it anyway, because that's my motto. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Doing it and then being like, why was I so scared? That was so lame. It was like not that big of a deal. And yet it's a monster in our minds and it's terrifying. And what I've come to discover about fear is these beliefs that we have. And the more fear we feel, like those moments of utter terror, is usually because a belief that we have that's false is trying its last best ditch effort to hang on. And the more fear we feel, the more powerful it's trying to stick with us. And if we just feel the fear and do it anyway, then those beliefs often just, they disappear. And so a belief is almost like it's almost like a person, like it wants to stay with you forever, kind of like this needy, codependent person. And you think of a belief like that, and it's like, but I'll do anything to stay with you. It's kind of like this dysfunctional person. And one of the tactics it uses is fear. And it's fear because it wants to stay with you forever. When you can recognize that for what it is, it's almost kind of laughable sometimes. I often think about beliefs like, the angel and the devil on our shoulder. It's not really like that, but it's kind of a way I can visualize it in my mind. We all have these good beliefs of the angel. You can do it. Go for it. You're powerful. You're strong. You're a loving person. All those good beliefs. And then the other ones, like, you're not good enough. You're going to die if you're seen. That's been a big one for me. God, what are other ones? You have to work hard for money. We've all got these ones that are like, maybe not the most empowering beliefs. And that's all they are, little devils on our shoulder that you can just be like, I hear you, but I don't want to keep you around. And you can, send them off to some other journey, not yours. But a tactic of those little, what I call little devil beliefs are, it's fear. And so when you can see that, it's often easier to navigate your way through it. It's not that those fears aren't usually rooted in something very real, whether it's in this lifetime or some other lifetime that you're sourcing from. Often we develop those kind of beliefs in moments of intense trauma, and they stick with us long after they have served us. So one of my passions along the journey has been actually to learn how to do this kind of healing work with people, and to do it very quickly and rapidly to really help people heal the things that are still with them that they no longer need on their journey, and to do that, often in a single session, so that people can really feel free and liberated and move beyond whatever, their limitations have been to the next level of their journey.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that with us, Taryn. I think I speak for myself. I know I can relate to those conversations that we're having, right? The little angel and the devil on our shoulders. And, you know, I think many of us have experienced that where we speak to ourselves like we want to speak to our best friend. You can do it. You're capable, you're smart, you're strong, whatever. And then the other side that's like, you don't know what you're doing. Nobody's going to believe you. Why would they listen to you? Or whatever it's saying to you. And your point about feel the fear and do it anyway. I love that. Absolutely. It's like we can be in the midst of all of those things that are scaring the pants off of us and still do it anyway. And then what do we discover? We are so much stronger than we thought we were. That thing that was scaring us before was really nothing. I mean, it was this tiny little thing that we made into a huge, monster. And we can just surprise ourselves when we do it anyway. So I love that. And thank you so much for the point about these traumas or fears, things that we're carrying with us. They served a purpose in the moment, either to keep us safe or, if something was going on, it was to protect us, but it's not working anymore. And so if we recognize that and begin to move beyond it, so much more we can do with our lives, right?
Yeah, and a really interesting relationship between genius and fear I've discovered is that when you're operating from your passion and you're feeling that excitement, an interesting thing happens. You actually kind of raise your energy and you kind of raise the light in your being. And what simultaneously happens is it casts an even greater shadow on the darkness within you or all those limitations. And so often on the journey to genius, if you will, or just really operating from our excitement and our passion, is it reveals to us all of our deepest limitations, wounding, patterning, beliefs that are no longer serving us, whatever you want to call it. And so often on the journey, we're doing what we love, and then we hit these roadblocks because something pops up. It's our shadow being revealed because we're in the light more, and we've got to deal with it. And so we take a pause, we deal with it, and then that lets us go to the next level and the next level. But in some ways, the most personal growth you will ever experience is by actually doing what excites you. It's not always an easy journey because these things come up on the journey in ways they wouldn't if you were just stuck doing a boring job that you hated.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. You're so right. These I the way you just described that is that as we're growing and we're pushing ourselves, we're doing these things that we never thought we could do before. It reveals these things that we had no idea were there that were stopping us. And so now we have a moment that we can address and work through and release that to continue our journey. And so that's a beautiful representation, I think, and way to think about it. So thank you for sharing that. Can we talk about how people misunderstand the process of finding their purpose? Because, I think, and we've talked about passion and how we get excited about something and it's like we chase after that thing, but maybe that's not our purpose. And so, can there be some confusion there?
This took me many decades to understand, because everybody comes to me, Taryn, what's my purpose? It's like part of my coaching practice. What's my purpose? Help me figure it out. And this took me many decades to understand how this actually works. Because I myself, for the longest time, was like, God, if I could just get a memo from the universe that said, Taryn, your purpose is to go do this thing, then I'd have my marching orders and I would go do that thing and I would feel all good about myself. And, and what I discovered is that actually is not the way to think about it. So really the way to think about it is, number one, purpose is whatever you want it to be. Like, it's a definition that you assign to something. If you want your purpose to be to create happiness with everybody in your universe, and that's your purpose, then knock yourself out, make that your purpose and go do the thing. If your purpose is to make sure that every hungry person has food, then that is your purpose. Like, you get to decide what you want it to be. That's a very unsatisfying answer to a lot of people. But here's what I've discovered. The reason people get obsessed about their purpose is because they're actually not following their excitement. I only recently discovered this. So when you're not following your excitement, you start to obsess on purpose because you think, okay, that must be the way. If I figured it out, then I would be doing my excitement. But actually, the process is reversed. When you do your excitement, you automatically feel on purpose. So I'm going to say that again. When you're actually doing what lights you up, it's so jazzing and so energizing and so cool and so fulfilling and so fun. When you really get into that pure state, you're like, this is it. This is it. The question ceases to exist. So by asking the question, that's really your soul saying, find what excites you and go do that. Like, that's really all that like constant questioning is. And again, sometimes, our excitement's buried beneath a lot of layers. We got to kind of figure out what that is. One way to do that is to just do the small things that excite you. Go read a book, go to the movies, go have your friends over for dinner, have game night, like whatever. Like, there doesn't always need to be this big world-changing, cancer-curing kind of excitement. Like, there are little moments every day of like, what's the most exciting thing you can do right now? Go do that. And then that's you listening to your excitement, and then it wants to do more of it, and it just builds on itself. And this is really a habit that I have trained myself to do over the years, which is, okay, what's the most exciting thing I can do right now, and go do it. Now, sometimes, the most exciting thing is not my taxes, but sometimes things need to get done. But really, for the most part, I try to wake up every day and be like, what's the most exciting thing? Because that's what will create the roadmap for us. And they're not always big things for my career. Sometimes they're small things. Like yesterday, I played pickleball at 9:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. But that was the most exciting thing I wanted to do. And then I spent the afternoon doing all my work projects that were fun. So, yeah, a lot of times that those moments of excitement get buried underneath a lot of to-dos, especially when you're in a job you don't love, you're overwhelmed with parenting or personal responsibilities or caretaking your parents or whatever. Like, there's life, right? And yet, the more we can carve out those moments for ourselves, the more that stokes the flame of excitement in our heart and builds the muscle, because excitement is a muscle and it strengthens it. And then you start doing the things that really light your fire, and then you feel on purpose.
Excellent. So, so good. I love it, Taryn. Thank you. The on purpose. And when we think about when we're doing something on purpose, it kind of changes, right? It changes our thoughts around whatever it is that we're doing because it's on purpose. I love that. And, you're right. Every day we have to live our regular life, again, air quotes. We've got jobs we have to go to, we have kids we have to feed and drive to some sports thing or whatever the case is. And it's very easy to allow those day-to-day regular things keep us from exploring what's exciting. And so I love that tip that you shared about, just thinking for a moment today, what is something exciting that I want to do today? And the opportunity that opens for us to think about our day differently is amazing. Love it. And thank you for really going into, how our passion, plays into our purpose and the meaning of those. So just really good stuff. All right, where do I want to go from here? You talk about, geniusing, and this is, again, I'm air quoting your word geniusing, and it's the becoming, right? It sort of seems like the becoming of. So what are some signs that you want to share with the listeners of someone who is already geniusing and they don't even realize it?
Well, most people are geniusing at something. Now, whether it's your day job or not is, maybe not where you're geniusing, although most people probably are. Most people, just it's a very intuitively human thing to do something that we're jazzed about. It could be a hobby, it could be baking, it could be game night with our friends. And geniusing is really whenever you're trying to get better at something, because that's usually a sign that you care and you're interested. And so whether you're just at the very beginning of your journey, like learning something, or you've been doing it for a long time and you've reached those, much higher mastery levels, all of that in between is all geniusing. It's just often those channeled moments tend to happen more after we have enough context and enough understanding with which we can receive information. I'll just give you a great example of this. I know nothing about music. I don't know how to write it. I don't know how to read it. I don't know how to sing it. I don't know how to play it. Like, I am not a musician. So while the infinite intelligence of the quantum field is available to me with music, I don't have enough within me to absorb any of that. I would need to be at a bit further along level in that discipline in order to access those channeled moments where something like a song could drop in, right? Now with pickleball, I'm starting to get there, right? Like, I've got the passion for it. I've got better strategy. And now, like, those intuitive channel moments are coming to me slightly more often, right? Those three elements come together: passion plus strategy plus channeling, are like those zone moments. So you're geniusing when, at any point in the process, when you're first learning, but you kind of see it more once you get more experience, more skill, more mastery, more strategy. Those channeled moments can pop in more where you start to feel it more. And yet, anytime you're trying to get better at something, you are geniusing. You're at some point on the journey. You might be Ed Sheeran at the beginning where you're just learning how to sing, or you might be Ed Sheeran 20 years later, crushing it as like the world's biggest pop star ever. It's just all like, what point on the journey are you? Because you're geniusing the whole way.
Thank you for that. And something that came to mind in what you were describing for somebody who maybe loves to bake, it's the mixing of the ingredients, the creation that it becomes. It's like that can be your genius, right? It's the passion, the love that you're putting into it. You're going to be sharing this. So I love that it can be something as simple as that. You're just baking something, but it could be something as big as becoming a pop star, right? Because your love of music, the written word, a story you have to tell through song, whatever. And so it can really be anything.
It could be anything. You could love Dungeons and Dragons, and that could be you're on your journey to genius with that. My family likes to play Rummy as a card game, and spent 30 years honing my Rummy game. I've been geniusing this whole time, right? And so it doesn't matter what it is. It's just like, are you passionate? Are you trying to get better? And are you developing more mastery, more skills, more strategy so that those channeled moments have something to grab onto and you can absorb them in a different way and act on them?
Yeah, and thank you for, again, reiterating those points. It's important to hear it again, I think. It's good stuff. Yeah, truly. Okay, let's see. So for the person who is listening, would you say that I guess how can they become connected if they feel disconnected from what their gifts are? And like, what's a step that we could take today to begin the journey to that?
I think it's kind of what we talked about earlier, which is if you think about, well, let's actually unpack this. When you say disconnected, you can't ever really be disconnected, right? We are all here as divine beings, part of one eternal I am source, if you want to get spiritual with it. So you can never really be disconnected. But I think in the context of what you're saying is we're disconnected from something that's going to make us feel alive, right? Like, so how do we reconnect back into that piece of our heart that makes us feel alive? And I think step number one is recognizing you have a problem. It's like a 12-step method, right? Like, recognize you have a problem. Huh. I feel disconnected from what makes me feel alive. Okay, step one, we just admit it out loud. I accept that. I feel disconnected. Sometimes just admitting it and accepting that that's true is going to start opening up a whole lot more. So step one is we just admit that's where we're at. And then step two is sometimes we just ask. We say, I accept that I am really disconnected from my true nature, my true self, what's going to make me feel alive. And dear spirit, dear source, dear universe, dear higher self, dear all that is, whatever you want to say, dear whoever too, show me the way. Help me reconnect back into this piece of me that I'd like to reconnect within or into. And again, sometimes just asking will start to open things up. And then we take a little action, right? And it's those small things. It's like, okay, well, if I don't feel alive, what would make me feel alive? And this is an exercise I often give to people, which is, let's assume you have $1 billion. It's like money is just completely off the table. You have to write 30 things that would completely light your fire to do. And now 35 is actually even a better number. And when I say light your fire, everybody has on their list, I would travel, I would build my dream house. Like, okay, get those all out of the way. That's your first 10. Fine. Right. So, yeah. And then your next 10 are a little more interesting. Like, well, maybe what I would do is I'd actually open that cool, fun sock store I always wanted to do. Or maybe I would start my YouTube channel because I got something to say. Or maybe I would write that book I've always been thinking about, like whatever your thing is, right? That's your next 10. But here's where it gets really interesting. It is actually deceptively hard. 20 to 30 gets harder. You're like, well, God, what? Okay, like if I did all that, like then what else would I do? And then you start to get really saying like, well, maybe I'd actually explore this thing that I never even thought about. But I mean, if I've got $1 billion and I could do it, like, why wouldn't I try to open up a school and change the whole education system around how students are taught? Why wouldn't I, maybe grow fruit trees in every neighborhood in San Francisco and just see like if I could pull that little magic trick off? You start to get like really creative. And then numbers 30 to 35 are where like actually usually the real genius comes in because that's usually where like what's really been hiding will kind of start to peek out. So try that exercise. You're just opening the aperture and you're just reminding yourself there's stuff that actually would feel exciting. And it'll probably take you about half an hour. So half an hour of your life to just move some energy and open the aperture to reconnecting back into a part of you that you might feel disconnected from. And just that exercise will start to move some energy, right? Okay, so step one, we maybe have a problem. Step two, we ask for help from wherever. Step three, we actually do this little exercise where we write 30 things, 35 things down that would actually light our fire, assuming we had, billions of dollars. And then step four is we do one thing in the direction of something on that list. So maybe on your list is, I would build my dream house. Okay, maybe that really is like the most exciting thing on that list. Take one step in that direction. Get online and look at dream house designs. That's a step. Talk to an architect that you might know and just maybe start sketching it out. Even if you don't have the money to build it, that's fine. You can always get free advice from people, like do one action in the direction of it. Because again, you're just telling the universe that you're like open to a different life and you're willing to take an action. And then what happens is the universe starts meeting you and bringing you more. Here's the other really interesting thing is you can never actually get it wrong because your soul will always direct you back. Like, let's say you think building your dream house is like the best thing on that list, but really what your soul wants to do is, open up a karaoke bar. Like you will get directed to the right thing. It may take a little bit of time, but you will, the angels will redirect you, right? Your soul will redirect you. So don't worry, you can't get it wrong. Just take some action. If it's not the right one, you'll get pivoted. Don't worry. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that was fabulous, Taryn. Thank you so much for that. I loved every bit of what you just shared and that idea of creating this list. And you're absolutely right. I can picture for myself just trying to generate this list and how you describe the first 10 and then the next 10. And yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes like you really have to dig for an idea of what you would do. So I think that's amazing because you're asking yourself, like, what's the craziest thing I could come up with? And write that down and then take action on something on that list. I love it. So I think this is something that all of us can do at any point, today, tomorrow, whatever. Take that time and make a list like that and take some action on it. And I totally agree with you. I think once you start on some path, it will be revealed to you like either this is the thing I want to keep pursuing or it's not. And then you're redirected to something else. And so again, it goes back to like the experiences that we have that teach us what we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want. And it helps, sort of funnel us into a direction. And so love it. So good. Oh my gosh. Thank you for that. Okay. So at this point, I think I'd like to have you share with the person listening if there's something that you haven't said to this point in our conversation that you really feel like they need to hear. What would you like to share?
Most people don't think that they're a genius or anywhere even remotely in that ballpark. Genius is a very charged word for a lot of people. And what I would say is open your mind up to like what genius really is. It is the most beautiful part of our soul expressing itself through something, a creation through us, right? Like it's allowing creation itself to work through us to bring something onto this earth that is uniquely ours with our thumbprint, our soul signature, our love, our passion, our excitement. That really is genius to me is more of an energy than it is a label. And that's why maybe I like the word because I just love the energy of the everyday genius, which is that energy of somebody doing what lights them up and doing it well because they're jazzed about it. And someone asked me recently, is it more fun for you to talk to like a mega genius with a Wikipedia page or just an everyday person? And to me, this is the God's honest truth. The answer is it's the same for me because it's the same energy coming through, whether it's someone that I run into at a bookstore that's passionate about running their own bookstore and they're like really good at it, or somebody designing rockets, like to me, it's the same juicy, geniusy energy. And so I'd just say, don't let the word get in your way of really what it is, which is your true self coming through in a creation that only you can do through your love, your passion, your heart, your excitement. And that is really, I think, what lights us up and what makes us feel like this life is cool and exciting. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for that. So good. I think it's amazing to hear that it's the feeling, the energy, it's not so much like the definitive term that everybody thinks it is, right? This genius. And so I think that that's really important for us to hear is that it's not about, going back to the beginning of our conversation, it's not about a score on an IQ test. It's a feeling, it's the passion, it's the energy. And so it can be anything for anyone. And I love that.
And if
So
you
yeah.
think about genius, actually, genius is more felt than it is anything. And it's like I don't know if you've ever been to Florence and seen, the statue of David, Michelangelo. It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And it took my breath away. And I'm not really into that kind of art particularly, but I just sat there and I was like, this is an absolute work of genius because I felt the perfection in it. And so that's what I mean. Genius is actually more of a feeling. We feel it and then we call it something genius. It's not usually something intellectual, it's a feeling.
Yeah. And, just to speak on that for a second, because I have seen it as well. And what strikes me is that was once a huge block of marble, right? Absolutely nothing, just a block. And from that nothing, this was created. And it is just absolute perfection. And you look at it and you cannot believe that it was created from this block. right? And so I think that it speaks to the point that we can take whatever our life is, the piece of clay that's nothing, and mold it into or create it into what we want. And so I love that. Yeah.
It's the perfect song. It's the perfect Twitter post. It's the perfect, sculpture. It's the perfect cruffin at the bakery. It's, what, all of these things have perfection in them when they're just done so geniusly, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, Taryn, would you share with us? Because I know you have a YouTube channel. And so I'd love for the listeners to learn more about it, what you share on there. If they want to follow you, what's your channel name? So go ahead and take it away.
There is a fantastic video I just posted last week that ties into this conversation so perfectly on my YouTube channel, which you can just go to Taryn Voget and find me on YouTube. I'm easy to find. And it was actually the first time I did this, which was a channeled healing and activation to help you remove those layers and blocks that are blocking you from really expressing your passion or finding your passion. And I think it's like a 7-minute video, but it's a really cool exercise. And if you do it with me live and you get in the juiciness of it, it will really transform you and remove some of those layers that might be covering up your deepest passion. So that's on my YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. I also have the Everyday Genius Show, where I talk a lot about how genius works. It's just what I've discovered over the years in my Genius Lab of how it actually works, and so that's a fun show. So there's a lot of videos there. And then my Substack, it's a free newsletter I send out twice a month on just, genius and passion and purpose and really helping you see your own genius on your own journey. And that, you can just go to Substack and find me at Taryn Voget and sign up for free, get a free newsletter.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that for sure. And I'm going straight away to watch that YouTube you just shared because I want to try it. Okay. I love also to have my guests share if there's books or podcasts, things that they think have been beneficial or influential that they want to share with the listeners. Do you have some things that you'd like to share?
Gosh, it's a hard thing because I feel like it's so individual for everybody on their own journey. What I would say is not what I find interesting, because I think, that's maybe not the point. What I would say is follow your curiosity and find something that you're just a little bit curious about and go down a rabbit hole, because that is you taking action on your passion and activating your own genius in that way. So that's what I would say is, rather than listen to my advice, go just go down a rabbit hole with something you're curious about.
All right. Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't thought about that before. Just instead of, taking some arbitrary list of books, find something that piques your curiosity and go full force into that and see what you discover. So,
And you really open to the synchronicity. Somebody hands you a book, it falls off the shelf at the bookstore. You stumble upon this rando YouTube video that's like, oh, I actually needed that. Synchronicities will abound if you pay attention. That will help you on your journey.
yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay. So lastly, Taryn, would you share with us how the listeners can find you, follow along with the work you're doing? You shared your YouTube and the Substack. Are you on any other social sites that you want to share?
Oh, I'm everywhere. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're also my Facebook. Just find my name, Taryn Voget. And my website is everydaygenius.tv, which is fun because it's my initials also, Taryn Voget. It's everydaygenius.tv has all my stuff too.
Perfect. I will detail the information in the show notes so the listeners can easily find you. Thank you again for this conversation. It's been amazing. You have shared so much great stuff with us today. And so thank you again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk more soon. Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.